Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and just around the corner is the release of the new Quentin Tarantino film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I know there's some allegations out there about Tarantino. I'm not propping him up as a good guy. I don't know him. I'm not even saying he's a bad guy. I just know of some things being said. So I wanted to get that out of the way and say, yeah, I mean, for the most part, I am kind of a fan of some of his films. Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction. He wrote True Romance. He wrote Natural Born Killers. There's a lot of stuff that's come out of there. You know, I like the Kill Bill series. That I do enjoy. I think Jackie Brown was a stinker. Death Proof. There are some things. I mean, The Hateful Eight had its moments, wasn't the best. But, this movie here is being portrayed kind of like a buddy comedy. And guys, I'm telling you right now, this is not going to be a buddy comedy. This is going to be one of the darkest things, if not the darkest thing. Certainly probably the bloodiest thing he's ever done. Ever. And I know you're saying, well, what about Kill Bill? I mean, that was like a spaghetti, chop them up kind of thing. The first one anyway. The second one was more dialogue. Yeah, and then the spaghetti western, Django Unchained, which a lot of people don't know was actually a remake. There was a couple Django movies back in the day, and that song, Django, that it starts out with, in the film. And that was a pretty gory film as well. But this is really about the Manson murders, okay? And today, when I was kind of scrolling through my feed, I noticed that Peter Dale Scott, the guy who came up with the term deep state, by the way, and if you've been watching my videos, today I did a video on BCCI banking, and one of the guys that's interviewed is Peter Dale Scott. In fact, I ended it on Peter Dale Scott. And he posted this article that got by me, I hadn't seen. It was posted a couple weeks ago, I believe. Yeah, a couple weeks ago at the LA Times. What really happened in the Manson murders? Chaos casts doubt on Helter Skelter theory. So first of all, I guess we kind of got to talk about what the Helter Skelter theory is, right? Well, this is a book by Vincent Bugliosi, who essentially says, and by the way, he was the prosecutor in that case, that Manson orchestrated these things because Manson himself didn't kill anybody. That's really not in dispute. You basically had this guy who, if you go read the LA Times article, he was a criminal. He was even a statutory rapist. He was on parole with somebody in San Francisco at the time. And somehow he gets down to Haight-Ashbury area. And lo and behold, he's also involved in some odd experimentation that's going on there. Now, previously, I've done a whole series on MK Ultra, and we're going to revisit that because the section, a lot of people think, oh, well, it was just LSD. No, it was far from just LSD. They were setting up houses. They were running extortion plots. The mind control was over the top. So Helter Skelter is by Bugliosi. And basically, Bugliosi, at least by this new author, his last name's O'Neill. I think it's Tom O'Neill. He's basically saying he was compromised. And if you scout down to the very end, they talk about how Bugliosi, where is it? Bugliosi, where was it? In 1974, they had actually done a report that, is it under this? Yeah, right here. He had beaten his mistress so bad that she miscarried the baby, then camped out at her house until she recanted her story to police. So that tells me that Bugliosi, and that's a guy who's done books on the RFK assassination, the JFK assassination, et cetera, and basically came up with this theory that Manson was doing this to try to blame the Black Panther Party and start a race war. Again, you can look into the case yourself. But what O'Neill does in this new book that's just out, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s, is connect a guy named Lewis West, who was a CIA-funded mind control researcher, brainwasher, and UCLA faculty member who once created a laboratory disguised as a hippie crash pad in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury neighborhood. Really? Well, that's interesting. And remember, UCLA, Hollywood, Los Angeles, that's all the very general vicinity, Santa Monica, all that stuff. And we're going to go into this old school documentary where even Timothy Leary is going to say he credits the CIA with starting the counterculture movement. And if you didn't know, the CIA was the one responsible to go getting psilocybin mushrooms. They actually went to South America and found them. I mean, this is all real stuff. And when you look at this scientist, Lewis West, first of all, he injected a 7,000-pound bull elephant, Tusco, with 1,435 times the quantity of LSD that should work on a human, instantly killing the thing, by the way, instantly killing it. And then when he did the autopsy, he concluded, hey, we can use this to actually cull elephant populations overseas in Africa. They cull the herds. That's real. Okay? Now, I mean, this guy does not sound like a good person. He was also one of the people that said he could create a mind-controlled slave, put electrodes in brains. He wanted to do forcible castration with the drug cryptorine acetate, which kind of harkens to the whole Clockwork Orange, change a person. And of course, he was going to target Mexican Americans and Black Americans so people wouldn't throw a big fuss. I got a super chat, Hebro. Jason Burmis, one of the 21st century investigative reporters left in the U.S. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Hebro, for that super chat. So, there's not a whole lot out there on this guy. This is him right here. Lewis, I think it's Joins West. Yes, Jolin West. Lewis Jolin West. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go to this old documentary where you can see that there's a very real possibility that the CIA was involved. Remember, another weird thing is that Manson wasn't picked up right away. They didn't get these people for at least a month. And the producer who he was supposedly mad at and the guy who feared for his life, well, he's put with Manson after the murders. There's a lot going on here. I'm going to read the book. I mean, God knows when I'll get to it. I'm still not through the Area 51 book. But if you look at this right here, this is a quote from the very beginning. I'd faced multiple threats on my life. I don't consider myself credulous, but I discovered things I thought impossible about the Manson murders and California in the 60s. Things that reek of duplicity and cover-up, implicating police departments up and down the state, plus the courts, plus, though I have to take a deep breath before I let myself say it, the CIA. So it's going to be an interesting read, definitely going to do that. But now, let's get into the CIA, more than just LSD, human experimentation, and the indifference of these people. The indifference of these people. They don't care.
The man who would oversee the CIA's research into drugs and most of the agency's behavior programs is this man, Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist. Dr. Gottlieb declined ABC News' request for an interview. In their never-ending search for the miracle weapon, CIA operatives searched here in the remote mountain areas of southern Mexico for what up to then had been considered a myth, magic mushrooms. They used this man, a part-time chemist for the CIA, to dupe this man, a vice president of a bank and an amateur mycologist or mushroom expert, to try to get to the magic mushrooms and turn them into a drug.
So again, take a look. They are the ones that brought quote-unquote magic mushrooms. They'd heard tales of this, throughout culture. And the CIA is the one that sent a mushroom expert down with agents to do this.
But it would be the amateur, R. Gordon Wasson and his colleagues, who would win the race and develop the drug psilocybin from the magic mushrooms.
We went into the Mazatec area, far from the highways, remote from Mexico City. There we found that rotten bagasse, as it's called, bagasso, covered with mushrooms. These mushrooms I didn't know, had never seen. They were the sacred mushrooms.
Wasson would also discover and record the ancient mystical rites of the mushrooms from a local shaman or magical priestess, Maria Sabina.
So again, this is old culture. I want to say thank you so much for the 2 recent Super Chats. P-Bro, keep rocking it out, doing great work. Well, thank you, brother. And then we've got Lightwalker. Keep going, Jay. You're a good truth researcher for our generation. I really appreciate that stuff. So again, the CIA, remember, you got to understand, intelligence, military, a lot of these things were just myths, were just stories. And it wasn't just our military intelligence doing this stuff. All over the world, all sorts of networks. So now you're seeing that the Central Intelligence Agency derived psilocybin from a trip down there with a mushroom expert and their agents so that their doctors could, use it on unwitting subjects.
And we're seeing incredible sights. They would go slowly or they would go fast as I ordained. All your senses are rendered acute. We say that you see visions, you see hallucinations, but that doesn't begin to tell this story. The hallucinations are only part of it. You hear sounds, you smell things. The night was thrilling.
Word of Wasson's discovery reached the CIA quickly. Dr. James Moore, a University of Delaware chemist, secretly served the CIA preparing deadly chemicals on short notice.
Please, secretly served the CIA providing deadly chemicals on short notice. These are the types of people, worked at universities, they work at hospitals, they don't care about actual people. They're sociopathic in that sense.
Moore was instructed to get close to Wasson and accompany him on another trip to Mexico to get the magic mushrooms. Internal documents show the CIA felt a drug derived from the mushrooms could remain an agency secret. What in the world were they looking for with the magic mushrooms?
I think the best answer to that is that they were looking for fundamental information on compounds that would be capable of causing changes in behavior, changes in mental attitude.
Did you ever consider what would have happened if any of these substances were given to, say, unwitting people?
Oh, I don't remember having considered that specifically.
What if you... I trust perhaps you've thought about it.
Well, I haven't worried about it.
Well, I haven't worried about it. I mean, I was doing this stuff. I mean, do you really think I gave a fuck about anybody? I mean, they're just patients. By the way, Patrick Lawrence, thank you for the super chat. Keep up the good work, Jason. Thank you for the support. But I mean, look at this monster. I mean, even after the fact, you think it bothered? You think he lost one wink of sleep? No, he did not. So to, again, go back to the Manson thing in this book, Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. Now you're going to start getting into that region, okay? It's a disturbing idea, but look at these. This is a disturbing person we're looking at.
Your question again, what would I have thought had I known that
any of these substances would
have been given to
unwitting persons?
You mean a hostile agent in of another government?
No.
Again, like I said, he keeps like the guy can't believe that he would be, this oblivious to the concern of another human being's life. So he keeps spelling it out. No, not another agent from somebody who, was on our side, had no idea what was going on. No, I don't think about these things at all.
I think that was probably one of the things they had in mind.
I mean, testing it out on an American citizen.
I guess I must seem very, very cold-blooded about this, but I don't recall ever having been very much preoccupied with that issue.
So I was never preoccupied. See, I mean, he spelled it out for you 5 ways from Sunday. We didn't care what we did to other human beings, even the ones that we were supposedly, protecting or doing this for. That's what that guy just said to you.
But many drugs were tested in this way. A decision was made at the highest levels of the CIA to do testing on unwitting Americans. As one CIA document says, such testing would be operationally realistic. A former CIA official who worked on these programs describes for the first time how the decision was made. He did not wish to be filmed or recorded. Thus his remarks are read by someone else.
I think every last one of us felt sorry to attempt this kind of thing. We knew we were crossing the line. Every decent kid knows he shouldn't steal, but he does it sometimes. We knew damn well we didn't want anyone else to know what we were doing.
The decision was made to do testing on unwitting victims. It was decided they should be on the fringes of society because they were most vulnerable.
The fringes of society, they were most vulnerable. Drug users, remember that Haight-Ashbury thing? Low-level criminals, remember how Charles Manson was on parole, a low-level criminal? Prostitutes.
It was the borderline underworld, prostitutes, drug addicts, and other small-timers who would be powerless to seek any kind of revenge in case they found out.
And as their predecessors had a decade earlier, the CIA turned to George White for help. White was now a high-ranking narcotics official, and by this time, the stories about George White were legendary.
We're going to stop it right here. So basically, you had a gangster in a uniform, George White, somebody who did whatever he wanted, and while he's supposedly, regulating and fighting drugs, no, he's experimenting on human beings.
So the waiter says, may I help you, monsieur? And George White was busy talking with me. Paid no attention to the waiter, so the waiter tapped him on the shoulder, says, may I help you, monsieur? George White turned around, whipped his gun out, and stuck it in the guy's face like this in this crowded restaurant.
George White did not mind bending the law, and he knew the street well. He was the ideal choice for what the CIA had in mind.
We were Ivy League, white, middle class. We were naive, totally naive about this, and he felt pretty expert. He knew the whores, the pimps, the people who brought in the drugs.
He knew the whores, the pimps, and the people that brought in the drugs. Remember, government agent, high-ranking government agent George White, no big deal.
White set up so-called safe houses for the CIA in New York, here in Greenwich Village, and later in San Francisco, in this hotel.
San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury area in this hotel.
And in an apartment atop Telegraph Hill with a commanding view of San Francisco Bay.
Oh.
While the existence of these safe houses was disclosed last year, details of what took place within them has not been told. A former CIA official who worked in the safe houses reveals that they were used not only for drug testing, but to study sexual behavior and how it could be used to manipulate people.
Hey, anybody Jeffrey Epstein? Bueller Epstein? Huh? Blackmail operations? Is that coming up too? See how all this integrates? We did something on drugs earlier. J.P. Morgan, the banking. I mean, this is the Leviathan. The power structure feeds into this. This is the real criminal class. Okay?
I liked it, so I played it.
We did quite a study of prostitutes and their behavior. How do you take a woman who is willing to use her body to get money out of a guy to get him to talk about things which are much more important, like state secrets?
Oh, like state secrets. Oh, wait. So this is about blackmail. Oh, this is about espionage on top of it. You want a mind-controlled killer slave. You want to see what you can do to people. You want to wire people's heads with electrodes. And again, this is an 8-minute segment we're going over. I have a whole playlist where we go over this whole hour-long documentary and the different segments on it.
We learned a lot about human nature in the bedroom. We started to pick up knowledge that could be used in operations.
Oh!
There would be victims in all of this, but as the agency knew, they couldn't fight back. Some entries from George White's diaries. Clarice gets horrors. Janet, sky high. As one agency memo says, we have no answer to the moral question. The safe houses were not the only testing grounds. Millions of dollars would be spent on LSD research at universities throughout the country. And word would begin to spread on campus about this so-called mind-blowing drug.
And by the way, here comes Timothy Leary, as I promised, crediting the CIA with bringing in this movement. Do you see the picture? So we're going to wrap that up in a second, but I really want people to understand it's not far-fetched that Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the secret history of the 60s has some credence. And it's not far-fetched that we're about to see, a propaganda piece that's based on Helter Skelter by Vincent Bugliosi. Remember, who's written books on JFK and RFK. He's one of these guys who's like the ultimate debunker. He's Debunky McJoe. And this case is just a very, very bizarre one that now even the LA Times, I'm not saying they're promoting this book, but they did a pretty fair piece here. Even though they do try to make it a little conspiracy theory. But, again, conspiracy theory or what? We're about to hear Dennis Leary tell us how the CIA brought LSD, to the people.
Suddenly, there was the counterculture of the 60s.
I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
Dr. Timothy Leary, the 1960s Johnny Appleseed of LSD.
The CIA funded and supported and encouraged hundreds of young psychiatrists to experiment with this drug. The fallout from that was that the young psychologists began taking it themselves, discovering that it was an intelligence-enhancing, consciousness-raising
Yeah, was that the fallout or was that the plan?
experience.
I know that some of the studies in which the CIA had supported used as subjects people who later became strong proselytizers of LSD. So, in that sense, yes, I think it did sustain the perpetuation of the use of the drug. And it's rather ironic, isn't it?
The counter case that I would make in relationship to that is to remember that the people who were doing the research were people who would be doing the research regardless of who was the sponsor.
So again, even if we sponsored it, even if we did this to unwitting victims, even if we brought the counterculture together, even if we may have had, a hand somehow in the Manson killings, and again, that movie's going to be brutal. What's the big deal? There's no big deal there. Folks, if you like what I do, if you're new to this channel, if you saw something you liked, we're not just covering MK Ultra. We cover banking ties to drug dealing. We cover the deep state. We cover biotechnology, transhumanism. We're at the forefront of the Epstein case, Bohemian Grove, and others. Human microchipping, R. Kelly, you name it, we go over it. If you like this, please thumb it up. Please subscribe, join the Burmist Brigade, ring that bell for notifications. And guys, if you can, this is how I'm funding myself. I do appreciate all the super chats out there. You guys absolutely rock on that. But I got to GoFundMe going every month. We met our goal, just over our goal last month. I'm hoping to do it again this month so we can continue to grow and I can continue to bring you 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 videos a day, 7 days a week. Thank you guys so much. And I will see you all on the flip side.